pleasure to be back in studio today with Ambassador David Comissiong, Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM. Good morning and welcome back.
Nice to be back home.
Absolutely, welcome home. So this past week has been interesting for more reasons than one. But I think all eyes have been on the UN and all that has been happening with the leaders of the world gathering in New York City to share all of the challenges and triumphs of their respective nations.
And the high point of that entire high-level UN General Assembly, in my opinion, was the speech of Prime Minister Amor Mottley. In fact, I think she delivered the best and the most important speech in her life. It was really a tremendous speech, and it was a tremendous speech because she sent such a strong and positive message about the need for the world, for the UN, other international institutions to reset. And the reset, that was the theme of her speech. And the reset that she called for was that we need to create an ethos, a culture in which we see each other, we feel each other, we understand that our humanity is invested in each other. And we need to create a world in which we work together on things that are critical to our common humanity, our well-being as human beings, how we create and prioritize human development, how we get away from warfare, and she had the audacity to say to the world, you need to turn to the African philosophy of Ubuntu.
Yeah.
That I am me because of you.
Yes.
And because of we, and because of our connection with each other and with Mother Nature. And I think it's a message that it's a message that the world desperately needs right now, and it's a message that's going to resonate for many, many years to come.
I think it will resonate too because it touched on many areas, and we want to share some of that this morning. I think top of the table, we're going to start with what she said about reparations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's listen in to Prime Minister Mottley addressing the UN General Assembly.
My friends, we are reminded that 2024 is the final year of the United Nations Decade for the People of African Descent. Much has been achieved, but the recognition, the justice, and the development for people of African descent that was promised by this decade has, to say the least, not yet been fully realized. And it is for this reason that the Caribbean community joins the growing chorus, and my own country in particular, for the immediate proclamation of a second decade to complete the unfinished work and address the matter of reparations for slavery and colonialism. I start here because this is a necessary but complex conversation, and the Caribbean community is resolute that it must happen. Its resolution lies, and I want to be very clear, its resolution lies in a multi-generational approach, in the same way that the £20 million sterling debt that was incurred by the British government only was repaid in this 21st century, almost 200 years later, so that the notion of unaffordability becomes a non-issue once we recognize that the solution to reparations must be multi-generational and grounded in development.
And that's, again, addressing reparations in a very poignant and really to the point manner.
Yeah, but this is the beauty of Prime Minister Mottley. Not only does she present, the moral high ground, but she also pins down that lofty moral view in very concrete, practical ways of doing things, so that it is in fact achievable. It's not just lofty words. So she's making the point. that yes, what is owed to the African people might be a tremendous amount, but we must not be daunted by that, because it can be achieved if we understand that reparations can be implemented across multiple generations. That's a very powerful idea, and that has in fact taken the reparations campaign a step further. She also mentioned about the need for a second UN decade for people of African descent, and that's something that CARICOM is very much invested in, because the chair of the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent is one of our own, June Suma, Dr. June Suma from St. Lucia. So she used the opportunity to really put the CARICOM reparations campaign and idea firmly before the world community.
And the underpinning of the conversation, her entire presentation, as you mentioned when you opened, was that need to reset.
Reset, yes.
Inclusive of reconnecting with who we are and the earth generally. And that's what we're going to share with you now.
Mr. President, of necessity, the reset must also be characterized by institutional reform, which has to start in the United Nations councils. These councils suggest that some are full members, and others are only part members, and some may be part-time members, and some may be occasional members. All of this has no place in the 21st century. And the anger and the mistrust of our citizens and institutions, in leaders, in multilateralism, and in the processes which exclude while yielding much talk and little action is very real. And nowhere is reform and consequentially trust and hope more important to the well-being of billions of people today than in relation to the global financial architecture. Restricted access to capital, its disproportionately high costs barring us from doing that which we must, its inadequate scale, and the overwhelming burden of debt often imposed on us by circumstances beyond our control. These are all now combining to force governments in the world's poorest countries, and frankly, across many vulnerable middle-income countries, to devote more resources to debt service than to health and education, and in some instances, even infrastructure. For far too many members of the human family, cold ground is our bed and rock is our pillow. Too many go to bed with their bellies hungry, and too many may not even have a bed. Our reset must therefore collectively build a common agenda that reflects and reinforces our shared humanity. It is that shared humanity that binds us together. Mr. President, you know better than most. Our African brothers and sisters got it right with the principle of Ubuntu, and have used this principle, this General Assembly, to remind us that its simplicity is what we should aspire to. I am because you are. I am because we are. My well-being is tied to yours, and our collective well-being is connected to Mother Earth.
Again, that message that you talked about, a message of resetting, and very impactful rather. I am because you are. I am because we are. That's about working together.
And the very practical application of it that she is stressing, and let us not lose sight of this, she is saying that the system, the international system, must now be reset, and it must be reset to a position where the critical purpose of the system must be to respond to people's basic human needs, the need for food, the need for education, healthcare, shelter. She's saying that we must reorient all of these institutions so that their first priority becomes, how do we respond to the human needs of the masses of the people all over this planet for those basic things? Because right now That is not how the system works. You know, that is like a secondary thing. But she's saying we now have to make that central and fundamental to all of our institutions, from the UN back down. And especially she's making the point to the international financial institutions that need to provide the resources to make sure that people don't go to bed hungry and that people have health care and so forth.
With that said, that's a great segue into the next clip we're going to share, where she spoke substantially about the Bridgetown initiative.
Yes, yes.
That is why, my friends, we launched yesterday the third iteration of the Bridgetown initiative, which identifies three key principles, very simply. One, we must change the rules of the international financial system and reform its governance and instruments. Two, we must shock-proof vulnerable economies by dealing with debt and liquidity in a comprehensive, development-focused manner. And if we need to give countries a shot of liquidity like we give them a shot of adrenaline to avoid them falling off the cliff of death, then we must do so. And thirdly, we must augment financing by boosting country capacity to invest in resilience by several means, including what has been announced already, the rechanneling of special drawing rights through our multilateral development partners, but that will only be truly effective if there is another issuance of SDRs in the near future. Indeed, we must also address the challenge, and this I believe to be the fundamental mission of this generation, of how we are going to secure the global public commons to be able to maintain our safety and stability as a global community. We're going to have to discuss how we can secure it, and of course, how we must finance it. And that is not only the climate crisis or the loss of biodiversity that we speak about, but the other many global challenges that can truly destabilize countries and regions.
Definitely strong, talking about moving into another phase of the Bridgetown initiative.
Yes, she released the third edition of the Bridgetown initiative last week. And again, if you go and read, and I would encourage all of Barbadian and Caribbean people to research the third edition of the Bridgetown initiative, but when you read it, you will see the fundamental strength of Prime Minister Mottley. So she's presenting this lofty vision of a new humanity, but then she's pinning it down in precise policy reforms, precise, new mechanisms to achieve it. So it's not just rhetoric. And the Bridgetown initiative, the new edition, it says, number one, we have to change the rules of the game. We have to restructure these institutions to make their primary responsibility be to respond to the human needs of our people. We need to give small countries, developing countries, more say in the governance. And as she said, we need to shock-proof our economies. We need to put in place the debt pause clauses, for example. We need to put in place the 30 to 50-year loans that developing countries can invest in development so that they become more resilient.
So as you mentioned, just laying it all out as in a plan to be able to make it
concrete,
happen.
Not so it's the lofty philosophy, but then it is pinned down in very concrete ideas and practical ideas.
All right. She also addressed the group of nations, and we're going to take a look at that part of the speech now.
Let me use this opportunity as well to inform you that 2 days ago we took over the presidency of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, the V20 countries of the world, from Ghana, whose president I would like to thank for the excellent stewardship of the group over the past 2 years, and indeed for the strengthening of its institutional capacity. The priorities of our term as chair of the V20 countries will be the multiple dimensions of climate crisis, dealing with them, the impact of the climate crisis on human health, and of course, the issue of debt and climate, because if we don't solve that, we cannot take the appropriate actions to deal with climate. I invite all United Nations members who are not yet members of the V20, but who are climate vulnerable, to join this group, because it is only through amplification of our voices and consistency of our message and solidarity that we will continue to see the pace and scale of reforms that we need to be able to save our people's lives. I commend to you the declaration of the leaders of the Climate Vulnerable Forum that was adopted this week on Wednesday.
Speaking of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, and I think another major part of her presentation was, of course, speaking about what's happening in Gaza. I don't think it's by any chance that she spoke directly after Israeli President Netanyahu.
Yes, I suspect, I don't know for certain, but whoever designed the order of speakers probably knew that they would need a speaker coming right after Netanyahu, capable of expressing the moral conscience of the world. And that is what was needed, and that is exactly what she did.
And this part of her speech received most applause. Let's take it in.
We need peace. And it cannot be too difficult for us to work for peace. It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament, much which has guided many people across this world. But when we turn from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it is Romans that says to us, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, not any country, not any human being. So that the Bible can't be used as a convenient aid when it suits us and rejected when it doesn't. In the midst of this maelstrom, we were very clear. My country took the step this year of recognizing and establishing diplomatic relations with the state of Palestine, in spite of having supported a two-state solution since 1969. And we did this because it is clear to us that the state and people of Palestine, human beings, are entitled to full recognition by integration into and support from the international community. The Charter does not say we the people, with the exception of any one group from any one part of the world. We join with others, therefore, in congratulating the state of Palestine in taking their seat among the United Nations member states as they did on the 10th of September of this year. And let me be clear, we condemn the actions of Hamas on October 7th. But we equally and strongly deplore the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, which is the result of the disproportionate use of force by Israel. There's no justification for it. And that is why treaties exist governing the rules of engagement for war. Because we as human beings learnt better and know better and committed to better. A two-state solution, no matter how elusive it may appear to be now, is the only answer. And I've said already this week that we have known difficult battles in mankind's history. But when we were in it, we didn't think we could achieve it, but we did. We abolished slavery. We removed apartheid in South Africa. These battles are not beyond our creativity, our capacity, and our resilience to resolve them.
Again, addressing Gaza just after the Israeli leader.
Yes, a powerful affirmation of the humanity of the Palestinian people.
And the capacity of human beings generally. I think humanizing what is happening was very important to kind of balance out what went before.
Yes, and using the concrete example of Barbados, that Barbados has recognized the state of Palestine. And she made a very, very important point, that it is not beyond the capacity of the world to solve wars and conflicts. That once we are serious about dealing with the fundamental root causes of wars, if we make the effort, we can solve them. And that kind of cultural optimism is what the world definitely needs now, because we are caught up in so many conflicts, so many wars that are causing so much grief and loss of human life. So for Prime Minister Mottley to affirm the humanity and the value of the people of Gaza, of those children and women and men who are being slaughtered, that was extremely important. And then for her to go further and to say that we must resolve to bring wars to an end. And we can do it the same way we brought slavery to an end, the same way we brought apartheid to an end. If we make the effort to deal with root causes, we can do it.
And of course, she brought it all home to the Caribbean in addressing the challenges being experienced in Haiti and Cuba.
The Caribbean community has been working hard this year to support our largest member state. And in the early part of the first few months of this year, we met on Haiti almost 3 to 4 times a week to guarantee the stability that we ask you now to help us secure. We thank the efforts of the Eminent Persons Group of former CARICOM Prime Ministers who were on the front line of helping to resolve this complex problem day in and day out, so that we could find a political consensus for Haiti. That Haiti had at this General Assembly both the interim president of the Transitional Council and Prime Minister Cornille is a remarkable achievement given where Haiti was in February of this year. Let them continue on a path, please, of securing their future. And we cannot be on this podium speaking about Haiti without thanking Kenya and President Ruto for their remarkable leadership. After many delays and in what represents now a historical precedent for an African country, they have ensured that an African country has taken the lead in helping to tackle the peace and security challenge beyond its own continent. That is the kind of reset that we need in the international community. And Mr. President, you cannot come on this platform regrettably, although I look forward to the day when I will not have to say it, when we must ask for reprieve for the people of Cuba. It is unacceptable, it is unconscionable, and that it continues today is a mark on our international conscience. The Cuban people continue to face the most dire of economic circumstances, and that this is directly as a result of its exclusion and its designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. And I have addressed our only knowledge of terrorism, and Cuba is in fact the downing of the Cubana plane off the waters of Barbados, where Cubans, Guyanese, and Koreans were killed. My friends, Cuba has been a valuable partner, stepping up for us when it has mattered most, by the provision of nurses and doctors in pandemics, and by the provision of other essential workers when the global community needed it, and when people needed to be liberated in Southern Africa. The reality is that we must have and continue to have resolve in calling for the embargo to be lifted, and we will condemn it year after year after year because it is simply wrong.
And that is, of course, timely as well, considering that just in another few days we'll be observing the downing of that Cubana plane on October 6th here in Barbados.
This coming Sunday.
Yes.
And it is also timely because just yesterday there was a vote in the UN General Assembly on the annual resolution denouncing the US blockade of Cuba and calling for it to be terminated. And the result of the vote was 187 nations supported the resolution calling for the termination of the embargo. 2 voted against it, the United States and Israel, and 1 country abstained. Ukraine. So the world has been telling the United States for over 30 years now that this embargo is not only morally wrong, but it is a breach of international law, and it must be removed. And the United States continues to say, we don't care. Might is right. We will impose it.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for coming in, as always, spending much time on the Prime Minister's presentation at the UN in the past few days. I think the remarkable achievement, apart from what she talked about, was how wide-ranging her address was, because she closed out by talking about our shipping industry, our shipping fleet, rather, our fishing fleet, the ships, Beryl, and how Beryl impacted us. So definitely covered a lot with the speech.
One thing I want to emphasize, especially for the Barbadian audience, is that Barbados is now the president of the V20, which is not really 20, it's really 68 countries. And we will be president now for the next 2 years. And that really complements the Bridgetown initiative, because the agenda of the V20 is really virtually the same as the agenda of the Bridgetown initiative. So just to emphasize that we are really trying to play our part, a very strong role in international affairs.
All right, thank you, Ambassador to CARICOM, Ambassador Comissiong, in for conversations on CARICOM. Today we went a bit beyond that, but of course you can see the entire speech once you get online, should it be difficult to find it.
Morning, morning.